Hey, this is EJ, and welcome back to People Along the Way. And today is every time I do this, it's a special guest. That's the reason I'm doing it in the first place. And this is my mate and my friend, Paul Colman, solo artist, speaker, singer, songwriter, all around fun guy. Is Paul Colman Trio, is that on break, hiatus, or is that like you guys are not together anymore?
Not together, but we still love each other. You know.
Yeah, still friends and everything. I figured that. I didn't know if that, because I knew you guys did another song anyways. But leader of the Paul Colman Trio at one time, and that's where I met you. So it's I don't even remember. I don't know if you remember how you met me. And it's okay, because you meet lots of people.
It was at a camp in Yosemite.
It was at a camp up in the mountains.
You were leading the singing.
I was supposed to speak, and you guys were doing the singing.
Oh, we were?
Yeah. It was fun. I walk in, and you guys were warming up, and that you guys changed my life.
It must have been rough before.
Oh, yeah. It was. Oh, it was so rough. No. But no, so, and Paul's apparently he's coming us from his studio, home / everything in Nashville. No, Franklin, Tennessee. Excuse me. Make sure I say where it is, the Nashville area. And I'll let him do, because like I said before, and these others, I talk a good bit, but I try to let the guests talk the most. So Paul, yes. You don't have a typical Tennessee accent. So
I sure don't, sir.
You sure don't, sir. So if you could kind of tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got to where you are right now, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, well that should be about 40 minutes.
Sounds good to me. I'll be back.
You want to go run some
errands?
But before I answer anything,
yeah.
I just have to ask a question, because I'm not sure if it's a disturbing thing or not, but behind you, there's a number of days chalked off. And I just need to know, dodgy about that, or whether
that is my children. The funny thing is, that was there before all of this happened.
Okay, cool.
It's not 7 weeks worth. Although they probably started, if they had my kids, because they have the attention span that I do, they would have started out that first week really strong, and in those rest of the weeks, they would probably just put one stripe for the rest of the weeks.
All right. Sorry, back to me.
That's okay. Enough about me.
I was born in England in the 60s.
Nice.
The late 60s.
Well, better.
And my dad was an actor and a singer. My mum was an actor, a singer, and a comedian, but was not paid specifically for those things. My dad was. And then my mother's from the UK, my dad's from Australia. And so when I was 7, we moved to Sydney, Australia, lived there for a year or two, and then we moved to Melbourne, Australia, where I lived till I was about 32 or 33.
So last year.
Since then, I've been living in the greater Nashville area.
Nice.
Also known as Franklin. So I've been. So I really have lived on 3 continents.
Wow, it's amazing.
I'm tricontinental. They say.
Tricontinental. That's amazing. So your dad was a musician as well, right? And Robert, is that his name? Robert?
Yeah. Robert.
I can't do it. My Australian accent's horrible. Any of my accents are horrible. I can do a really good redneck accent, and it scares my wife. But
her accent, I would say, was probably pretty redneck. But she said she's in California, but she sounds like a Southern gal to me.
She's been here a little too long. She's starting to say y'all and stuff, and it throws her off.
Growing up in Australia, we didn't really hear the Southern accent much. Like you hear the classic New York accent on TV.
Yeah.
And you might hear a Boston accent, a Chicago accent. You might sort of just hear the typical sort of American accent, but you really don't hear the Southern accent. So you know, when you hear people like Elvis, you don't realize that that represents a whole lot of people. And people are going, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. You know, thank you very much. Like you think that was Elvis, and then you move here and you're like, that's everybody. I didn't really realize like that was. So we actually, well, at least me, I like the Southern accent.
Yeah, me too.
I don't have that conditioning that says if you have that accent, you must be dumb. Yeah. Some of the smartest people I've met have that accent.
Yeah.
They're particularly like songwriters. Like there's this, like I'm not a massive fan of country music, but I am a fan of the writing. Mm-hmm. And I'm a fan of the writers because there's this wisdom in not being book smart.
Yeah.
You know, people talk about being educated, but that's an interesting word because what exactly is educated? Exactly. You could be academically educated, but there's a lot of people that, you know, anyway, I don't know how we got onto that, but I do actually like the Southern accent. Like I'm a fan, and I don't immediately think it means there's anything to do with someone's intelligence.
Well, I think that's, you know, for us, I mean, our introduction to Australia, I mean, we've always had a relationship with Britain, right? That was always, we had that in movies, et cetera, et cetera. Probably in the 70s, if we had heard an Australian accent, if I had heard an Australian accent, I would have thought it was Cockney of some sort. You know what I mean? Just because no context. But my introduction to Australia was twofold. One was Paul Hogan. Obviously, that's for a lot of Americans, that was the introduction. But also music.
Right.
So you have A Men at Work. You have In Excess, you have Midnight Oil. So, I mean, those were my introductions to, and AC/DC.
Midnight Oil would have been the most quintessential Australia of those because all the other guys sang and you probably couldn't tell they were Aussie.
Yeah.
Whereas Peter Carrick, you're like, what? What just happened?
I saw an interview with you. And I think that's why I enjoy talking to Australians a good bit because I feel like I have a little bit more in common with them. Sometimes, is you were talking about you got heckled in church once. When you this time you said I was heckled in church once. I'm sure but you were in Australia. You said it happened in Australia, but you said you kind of enjoyed that.
Oh, I love it. In fact, when I first came to America and started singing for American sort of religious audiences, mm-hmm. it was weird. There just was nothing coming back. It was polite. I was like, I'm not used to this level of politeness. I grew up singing in Aussie pubs. Yeah. And I'm used to a level of abuse.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think there's some cultural aspect to that though. If you went to, and I'm not trying to stereotype anybody, but if you went to like a predominantly African-American church, and you sang, you were singing for them, you will get reaction.
I have had it happen, and
it's totally different. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a different type. It's more of an encouragement, unless mm-hmm. you're a heretic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like Aussies are a great crowd to learn your chops with because they're not over polite. Yeah. But also they're not, like if you win them over, they'll go nuts.
Yeah.
But they're not just like Americans. Americans cop a lot of stick in the world. And I think a lot of it's just because they're louder and that the patriotism and their personality is more overt. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they're any less humble or arrogant than anyone.
Oh, yeah.
But like an American audience, one of the things that I like about Americans, they'll turn up and generally it's like, well, this should be good. You know, let's see what this is. Come on.
They're excited about it, yeah.
Come on, man. Yeah, man. Australians are like, yeah, probably a wanker.
This is going to suck. I know it. I paid $20, but it'll probably suck.
Someone said, what's the difference between Australians and Americans? And I said, well, it's this old story. Not my story. It's an old story.
Uh-huh.
It is that if I was an American and I had a son, we were standing there looking at this big mansion, I'd say, son, yeah, Dad. One day we're going to live in a house like that. Yeah, Dad. And if I was an Australian, I'd say, son, see that house up there? Yeah. One day we're going to get that bastard. Like that rough around the edges thing. And so Americans changed my life for the better. When I was 18, I had an opportunity to come and live in America, and I lived for 9 months in Arlington, Virginia, just outside DC.
Whoa.
And then I lived for 3 months in Montana. And yeah, I know. And I know. And
that's awesome. No, that's great. You got a great experience, I think.
But the thing about it is where I lived in DC, I lived in this house, and at the time I lived, there was about 28 guys.
Oh, God.
From all over the country. So I got a real sense of America, and what came across to me at a very important time was, go for it. Mm-hmm. You can do it. Yeah. Like there was this optimism and this positivity that I think is, there's the aspect of it is wonderfully American. Yeah. And so when I lived here for a year, I was like, I got to come back. So it was always a dream to come back and live in America. So yes, I've been around a bit. Not as much as Jason Bourne. I don't have that many passports or guns.
As far as we know.
I do have one gun,
but that's just right here.
That's right over there, actually. Yeah. It goes.
It's a good sound when you need it.
Oh, and I need it usually just before I get up. In the morning, I just stand and I go. All right, I'm ready.
I was watching some. What was I watching? I was watching some British travel show, and a guy was sword fighting with a bunch of guys. He said, I think we should do this every morning. He said, I think every person should get up, every man especially, should get up, pick up a sword, and just hold it. And just feel, it makes you feel good.
I know that some might think that's a weird idea, but I think every man who's listening to this resonates on some level with that idea.
I don't know what it is.
Great thing is often I'm naked or just in my underwear.
That'll scare people off too.
Just like, and I live alone, so it's okay. Sometimes, all right, and I'm just messing around. I don't do it that often, actually. But it is, it's...
The neighbors are like, Paul's at it again. Those musicians. He's probably tearing it up like a hotel room.
I know, right?
But you came here when you're 18, and then when I met you, it was 2001 or 2002.
I think it was 2001.
When did you guys win a Dove Award?
2003.
Oh, then it was much later. Gosh, as I've gotten older, things kind of run together. And
well, it could have been too much later than 2003 because the band left America in 2003 and ended in February 2004.
Yeah. Well, when we met, Grant had just gotten married. And so he was checking in, he's a newlywed. So he's calling his wife and checking in. And Phil, the drummer, was checking in, because you guys were
2001 and we weren't really living in America at that stage.
Okay. So it was, but you guys, I met you guys up in the mountains in Northern California, and you guys were just so different than, I had no slam on other musicians or anything, but you guys were so welcoming. And I was amazed at, look, you're Australian, you're from a different country, you also happen to be Caucasian. And I saw you put on, like, when you get on the stage, and this has been, I've watched you over the years, and you can do it on a screen, or because I saw my kids do the same exact thing. Or you can do it live. You can do it in a small space or a large space. I've seen you engage people that were sitting back, and I think it's probably because of the Australian interaction that you were talking about before. They're just kind of sitting back like this. I've seen you do that. We were at that camp. There was a big group of kids, very nice kids, or leaders were very nice, but they were at the camp was predominantly white, right? It just was, and Asian, some Asian, because it's California. There was a lot more diversity. And these kids, I knew specifically they were from the Oakland area, right? And they were just kind of like, this is not going to be good. This is not my style. Next thing I know, they're on stage with you making up dances and singing along and singing as loud as anybody else. And I sat back watching it because I wasn't sure how I was going to go over. It's like, okay, it's it's rock, it's and other things blended together. And I was just standing there in awe at somebody like you and Phil and Grant, who could get people on stage who weren't, they just at the, just because they're teenagers, and they're in a different situation, not interested. And next thing you know, they're the most involved the rest of the week.
Spiritual principle.
Yeah.
You want to take the house, you have to bind the strong man.
Yeah. It was beautiful. It was so beautiful. I started crying because I just, everybody, when you go to a camp, everybody should be having a good time. You just should. No matter where you're from, no matter what your situation is, it should be a break for a little bit. You deal with stuff at camp and everything, but I don't mean that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make it a long aside, but I've seen you do that multiple times.
And you know what's really interesting about it in retrospect, and with a number of years of therapy and a lot of books and a lot of conversations and a lot of prayer and a lot of time alone and a lot of time with people, as you reflect on some of these things, is that it really shows me how kind God is. Mm-hmm. Because you look back at that's nearly 20 years ago. And I think about myself 20 years ago and what I learned in therapy in the last 10 years about my motivations, about, the things driving me. And it's very easy for me to really criticize that guy who's 31, as very driven, as very full of himself. I mean, how many people name their band after themselves and just from
actually a good number of people, apparently.
Potentially a narcissistic phase, I'm not sure. but what I mean is the thing that's amazing, so many things that's amazing about God from my understanding, but the kindness of him to not wait until you're perfect. There was this guy, check this out. There's this guy on Facebook. I'm not having an argument with him because he's a really nice guy. I mean, when I say argument, I've studied philosophy and history, and when I say argument, I don't think of people shouting at each other. I think of a conversation.
Like a debate.
This is what it says. This is on his Facebook. Oh, my phone. It says, God speaks to those who take time to listen, and he listens to those who take time to pray. Amen. And I said, no. I said, I can think of many examples of God speaking to people who do not take time. Paul the Apostle would be one of them. And I said, I think God's the initiator with us. Doesn't the God of that sound a bit conditional? If you do this, I'll talk to you. Yeah. And so I guess my experience of God has been the exact opposite, is that he'll talk to you no matter what. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're a complete ass or you're a saint, he'll talk to you. Yeah. If you approach the wrong way or the right way, he will accept you. Yeah. So when I think about that guy, I think, okay, yeah, you're right. There was a natural thing that the three of us guys had where we were about people more than we were about music. And when each of us were like that, but when the three of us got together were like that, it was like, bam.
It's like a super team, super friends.
Scriptures talk about a cord of three strands is not easily broken. Yeah. Probably should have called ourselves the Paul Colman strands. Then again, the problem with that is Paul Colman's still in there. So, and the other thing too is that, one of the other things I learned about myself was that inside me was this little boy who is very hurt and full of pain and full of rejection and extremely codependent. He's 20 years off understanding what that word means. Yeah. Full of fear and everything. So part of the need to have to get people into it is needing affirmation, needing approval. And yet there's also part of it that's a gift. Yeah. So I guess my point is that if you're waiting around to be perfect for God to use you, my brother-in-law said it's just easier to steer a ship that's moving, just get going. And so as I hear your reflection of it, I understand the joy that it brings when you see it, because it is welcoming, it is inviting, and it has all those things to it, no doubt about it. Yep. But it's amazing how God's grace and kindness of using you to care for other people, despite what can often be not even like a mixed bag, a shandy of motivations, like rocket fuel, like, you know, it's like a Long Island iced tea of emotions.
Oh, that's strong stuff, man.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like, careful with that. So that's what that reflection just makes me think.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you pretty clearly that.
You want some milk for your tea?
No, thank you. I can tell you no, thank you.
How much do they cost? Is that the housekeeper?
No.
I'm just kidding.
No. She's very nice. She's just checking up on me. I'm drinking. Oh, by the way, what are you drinking? I'm drinking Earl Grey, and you got your British mug.
I mean,
I got my Nashville mug.
I should be drinking Earl Grey from this mug. You want to see something amazing that I can do with this?
That's how I would love. Oh, magic tricks.
I want this.
When I met you, I was 28, 29, and to speak more into what you just said, you were struggling with that stuff at that time and dealing with that stuff at that time, and maybe you don't remember it. I don't know, but I remember having a conversation because you were more mature than I was, and I was a broken man too. And I remember you struggling with the music industry stuff. You're like, you know what? I've been thinking about this, and I really don't want to do this anymore. And I've been thinking about this, and I don't want to do this anymore. It was, to me, because I was, and I still am, a very cynical person. The gregariousness, people don't understand is just probably a coping mechanism for that. But I'm usually pretty cynical, and at the time I was very cynical about religious music or people in that field. And hearing you talk in private, because we had some good conversations just on the side. We watched Band of Brothers together in your cabin. That's a different story for a different day.
Very different
small bed. So it was just how it was. It was like really tight. There was on a laptop, and we had to like lean up against each other. My neck was like this. Watching, we're crying because it's a really good series.
Yeah.
But I heard you inspired me where I was already. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, there's people that are doing this that are considering these things. You know, so it was.
You know, I want to challenge you to consider whether the word that you're thinking to describe yourself is skeptical as opposed to cynical, because my understanding of the difference, and when I say my understanding, people usually use that in passive aggression to mean I'm actually right, but I'm going to code it in because I'm not passive aggressive, and so I'm aggressive. So when I say my understanding, I literally mean my understanding as opposed to I think I'm right about this.
Yeah.
My understanding of cynical is cynical has to do with contempt. It's someone that's already made a decision, and therefore when they look at their analysis, they're just gathering it in to get more ammo for their cynicism. Whereas skepticism is someone that's going, you know what, I smell a rat here, and I'm going to look at this very, very closely, and I'm just going to believe anything. But in the end, I actually really want to find something that's working.
Yeah. No, I probably float in and out of both. Float in and out of both because there are days I would say I'm very cynical. And then those are probably my bad days. The good days are skeptical.
The other thing too is that, you know, we actually need, like, if you look at a good band, like people are pulling in all sorts of different directions. Like with the trio, Phil was never going to be the lead singer. And Grant was never going to be the lead singer. But without those guys, I didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is that even it's the same with people and personalities, is that we need people that are leaning a bit this way. We need people that are leaning a bit that way. I think the thing about it is to go, okay, I tend to be a bit cynical. I tend to be a bit skeptical. Okay, well, are you running towards truth or are you running away from it? Right. That's the question. I got a song. It's not a great song, but it's called "What You're Running From," and it says, "What are you running from? What are you running to?" Like it's that idea of like, okay, well, you might be this or you might be that, but which direction are you moving towards? And my opinion from knowing you for a couple of decades is you're someone that you actually hunger for the truth. Therefore, if you hunger for the truth, that means that's the direction you're moving in.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you'd bit of that, it's the point is we're heading in the right direction. And we need guys like you, because guys like you help us realize, you know, hang on a minute, I'm just taking this for granted, because the fact most people are sheep. Most people don't think for themselves. Most people look at it. I mean, Facebook right now, it is such an incredible manifestation of. I mean, these are the people that on Sunday, what we call Palm Sunday, threw down their clothes before Jesus of Nazareth. Oh, here he comes, you know, and the next week.
Santa.
So what I'm saying is, as humans, we're fickle, we're shallow, we're sheep, we are easily led astray. And is it any worse, or can we just see it more now? I don't know.
I think we have more access to the videos now. We can play back the video evidence.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, you in your life, you've probably had people criticize you for those personality traits. And I think that the older we get and the more we realize, well, this is kind of the way I roll, we actually appreciate, you know, like, I don't know, you're an extrovert, I'm an extrovert, but all my favorite people that I like to hang around with are introverts, because I'm not like them.
My two best friends are introverts.
Yeah, and I actually think that there's been this extrovert propaganda that's even come through the church, whereas the ideal personality is this. You're not so ideal, because you don't really talk to people, which means you're not very good at sharing your faith. We're going to get a speaker at this camp, and he's really good at doing it. And that's the goal, to be like him. And it's like, I think, you know.
That's not true.
not really, because I've been that speaker, and I can tell you that's not true. But so, you know, for what it's worth, I don't have any issue with anyone that thinks that way, really, because you're always going to be challenged.
Yeah. Well, I think music is a big part of your life, and it's a big part of my life. Right. So for a lot of people, like I have a list of songs that are my favorite songs that you've written, but I would rather hear, if I know some of them, I mean, some of them you put out, I'm just saying, I'm probably projecting. So if I'm projecting, I'm sorry. There are songs you put out and other people like, and you're like, I really don't like that song as much as you like that song. And there are songs that you put out and they're like your children, and you're like, oh, this is my song. And they go, we don't really like that song. And you're like, you're a bunch of idiots. But what song? Huh? So what?
Something completely different, but go ahead.
Might be totally different. But what if you could pick a few, like 2 or 3 or whatever songs, maybe one. It isn't. I'm not. You know, it's hard to. You've written a lot of songs. I was going back through your albums and stuff, because there's a lot of. I remember where I picked you up album wise, and also the albums that you've released recently, like the greatest hits, and also the Cactus. I went blank.
I know the name of it, but I'm preferring Watching You Sweat.
You can say it. It's okay. My brain.
Into the river.
What is it?
From the salt land to the river.
Salt land to the river. Sorry, I always think Cactus when I see the picture on it for some reason.
Probably should be.
Nah. But what if you were going to pick out songs like these are the 3 songs or 2 songs I want people to maybe not know me for, but they're the songs that I want people to hear, because they're they speak the most of what I'm feeling. What would you say are the 2 songs or
I'm going to have to disappoint you with my answer, because I'm going to come at it from a different direction.
That's fine too.
I don't have a lot of self-confidence or personal pride in my songwriting.
Okay.
I don't have this, this is my baby, or this is, you know, I don't have any of those.
Okay.
And I don't really feel very close and connected with my songs. And when I
because what's happened is that most of the time that I've performed to people hasn't been a room of people who all just love my music.
Yeah.
And they love my songwriting and my singing and playing, and they are just sitting there rapturously hoping that I will sing their favorite 10 songs. Right?
Yeah.
Now, when that's your experience, you can relax, you can chill, you can be a bit arty. Most of the time I've performed, it's been in environments where I'm serving something else, or I'm opening for something, or the production's not my own, or after people have never heard of me, or like I'm singing to this group or that group. It hasn't been a consistent place that I've performed.
Right.
Therefore, the songs that I've gravitated to performing are songs that have little tricks and funny bits that get people's attention. And so I did a little test on myself the other day, where the first sort of online concert I did during this whole coronavirus shite was I did the first show, and that first show was kind of like the songs that have become the most requested over the year, right?
And you did an album of that too.
Right, called The Most Requested. Don't know how I made that correlation between people requesting them and call the album Most Requested. But someone in my marketing, oh no, wait, I don't have a marketing team. Somewhere that must have happened. But what I decided to do the second one is because I'm aware of this insecurity, but also because I've had 8 years of therapy, I tend to walk up to rooms that are dark that I used to run away from. And instead I just flip on the light. And I've gotten rather brave at facing my shit. And so I thought to myself, I'm going to try and not do one song that I did last time. In the end, I sang one that I didn't do last time. But what happened to me during that experience, because the other thing too is when you're performing to a camera, there's nothing coming back. And I'm more than anything, I'm an entertainer. I'm more of an entertainer than a songwriter or a singer or a player or a musician or anything. My number one skill is I'm an entertainer.
And you were a wedding singer at one time, right?
Well, it's probably where I learned it.
No, it's a great skill when you're doing what you do.
And the great thing about a wedding is you realize that music is to be used in that environment to serve something other than yourself. So I tested myself that night because two things I couldn't do. One is the other was material that I'd learnt the muscles and songs are like, if you're building a house, the songs are like tools, this song's a nail gun, man. This is no matter what, this is going to hold it together.
Yeah.
If you're U2 and you're having a crap show, just play Where the Streets Have No Name and it's over.
People are crying.
Right. So in the same way as I knew what those songs did. Oh, this one does that. Oh, this one, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, this one. Oh, yeah. This one, I know what this one does. Whereas these other list of songs, some of them I hadn't played. I mean, I sang a love song that I wrote in 1993 to my ex-wife. Well, actually, she was my wife when I wrote it, but that would be weird writing a song to your ex-wife. But
it happens.
I hadn't publicly sung that. I don't know how long. And the other thing too is I had no feedback. It was just, and so when you ask about what songs, when people say things to me like, oh my gosh, that song just means so much to me. I'm like, part of me just goes, is this a joke? Like, I don't, because I think to myself, I don't see myself as a great writer that writes these songs, but I have had to learn to accept that people have really resonated with songs that I've written, and it's very humbling because when they tell me that, I want to go, oh, come on. But then the problem with that is that that's not receiving what they're offering. It's actually spitting in their face. So I've had to learn to say, oh man, thank you for that. Cool. What? But then I asked them about it, like, well, what is it about it? Because I don't feel like I'm going, well, what is it about this thing that I'm holding? It's more like going, tell me what? Like, you hold this. What is it you like? And so, but there have been a number of songs that I am particularly proud of.
that mostly are co-written. I didn't discover co-writing till about 16 years ago. I wanted to do everything myself. I wanted to be the singer, the songwriter, the producer, the marketing guy. I had to do everything, and I didn't realize at the time that I was just like massive control freak because of fear. I didn't really trust anyone. I didn't really trust God that if I didn't do it, it wouldn't happen.
Right.
But when I discovered co-writing was amazing, because suddenly people would take a song and you'd be like, oh my gosh, like that's amazing. So probably the first one that happened with was a song called The One Thing, which is become one of my most well-known songs. When I did the tour related to that album, I did like 40 shows. I sang it at 2 of them. I had no idea it was a great song at all. No idea. And all of a sudden it starts winning these awards on radio, and I'm like, look, the record company must have put that out as a single. And at an award show, and I get an award for 10,000 spins or whatever. And so that's a song that that I know is a great song. Yeah. Because there's a big difference between a good song and a great song. And when you're younger and you play a song to someone and you say, what do you think? You're really saying, tell me I'm awesome. Because you're not really saying, tell me what you think. You don't really want to know if there's a problem. So you get past a certain stage with art where you suddenly go, what do you think? And you really actually go, what do you think? But it takes a while, because they're not like, Bono says that your songs are really not like your children. They're like your parents, because they tell you what you're supposed to do. And if it's a great song, it kind of tells you this is what you do. So that song, and also that song reflected a particular moment where originally the chorus sort of said, I've questioned everything, and I question, do you love me? And the guy I was writing it with said, it'd be a much better song if you say, I question this, but the one thing I don't question is you. And I said, well, but I do though. And he goes, okay, well, do you believe God loves you? And I go, yes. And he goes, do you really struggle with that? And I said, yes. And he goes, well, if you believe it's true, number one, it's going to make it a better song. Number two is you're going to sing it because it's going to become popular, and it's going to end up being a part of how God works in your life. And I was like, and that's actually happened.
That's good advice.
Another song that is quite meaningful for me, but also I think is a great song, is a song called The Best Is Yet to Come, that I wrote with this Australian chick called Mia Fields. And I normally am pretty good with lyrics, but this song, I just knew, all I had was lift up your glasses,
raise them on high.
Yet to come. That's all I had. And I knew I had the feel, I had the chords, I had the feel of it. I knew what I wanted to be about, but I couldn't write the lyrics, and I had to track it the next day. So I managed to get Mia out of bed. I called her like 15 times till she picked up the phone. She goes, oh my God, what do you want? And I said, I need you. She goes, I'm in bed in my pajamas. And I said, I have to have this lyric done by tomorrow, and I know that you can nail it. She goes, oh my gosh, don't ask me to come over. And I said, would you please come over? She goes, oh, Paul. Okay. She comes over. She wrote that lyric in under 20 minutes. Just wrote it down and said,
that makes sense.
Go, and left. She's such a genius. But I think the reason why I love that song is because I've always loved songs that you can sing in a bar or in a church building. And it's a rousing song. It stirs me up, and it's a truth that you can sing over. And I do love that song. I don't know about.
I was listening to that song in the shower before this morning when I got up. I was going back through some of the songs I'd heard you done. I just kind of put it on random, but it was like a playlist, and that's one of the songs that. I love Irish music. I love Celtic music. I love that style of playing. And I think in general, I like what you're talking about, like that you can sing in a pub, because I feel more comfortable there anyways. But it's almost an anti-Irish song.
Wait, hang on a minute. you feel more comfortable in a pub than somewhere where the seats are all facing in one direction and one person talks the whole time, and then you have to stand up and sit down and you feel like you can't be yourself.
Yep.
Oh, compared to a pub.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost, but I don't mean in a negative way, but it's almost an anti-Irish song because it's so, except for like, you know, if it's a jig or something, but it's like, so sometimes like when you watch an Irish movie, everybody, it's all great, like Waking Ned Divine. It's a great movie. There's all this stuff going on. And at the end, there was a funeral, you know, and then they're toasting. But at the same time, that's life. It's I think that's what I love about Irish music and some other films and other and films and stuff is that they don't blink. It's like, oh yeah, I had this happen and that's okay. And it's, at the same time, you're in parallel. You're just like, the best is yet to come. All these bad things are happening. This is the way. These are the voices I hear saying to me, "This, oh, you're horrible. You're terrible." Look, it's going to get better, and it's not in a naive way that things are going to be better. You know what I mean? So my kids can sing that song because they start dancing to it.
It stood me up, and actually wrote it in the midst of the biggest, most painful bout of depression I ever had.
That makes sense.
You know, and but I didn't even tell Mia that.
Yeah.
I just said, this is what I wanted to say, and she knew my life well enough to just write it. Yeah. Let me try to pick one more.
Okay.
I think that the Cactus Heart song, one of the reasons why I like it is that it's the only song I've written in under 10 minutes that isn't crap.
Yeah.
It was just right from the get-go. And for those who want to listen to it, it's called Your Cactus Heart. And it's written from the perspective of God, which is something I think you should be very careful to do.
I understand.
Not at all, because who can represent God in a song? Yeah. But it's hoping that and believing that this is the way he feels about me.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, I've always been someone that I've never been unnoticed. I've always made an impact, but it hasn't always been a good one. But as hard as I try, I always still end up somewhere near the center of attention. And it's something that I have cursed more than have been thankful for, because my whole life I've just wanted to fit in, and yet feels like I've got 3 heads and I'm 10 foot tall, and everyone's like, you know, and I want to walk in, and I've wanted to just not be that way. And so I've copped a lot of rejection. I've been bullied a lot. I've been beaten up a lot, but it wasn't just one kid. It was like the entire class would get me after school on a wall and all take turns punching me in the face. That kind of stuff. Like, it wasn't just one kid at the camp. It was like 140 kids at a scout camp that threw me off a cliff. So what I'm saying is, like, I could tell you so many stories, and it leaves its mark, and it makes your heart like cactus. Yeah. And nobody wants to hug someone whose heart's prickly. And so in the song, it really says, you know, I love all these things about you. Like, I love your cactus heart. I love your ready shoes that run away when you think you lose. I love your thorny words laced in, I can't even remember the words, laced in something but with bitter herbs. And how can I love these things I hear you say? Because I can see why, and I can see you, and I can see why you do the things you do. And the first time I sang it was at this church building in San Antonio, and I got to the bridge section and I broke down. Like, I literally broke down crying, and I was like deep sobbing. And the pastor came up on stage. He put his arm around me. I was humiliated, and he said, "What happened?" And I said, I just got my song. Like, I just got it. Like, because it says in the bridge, one word at a time, build a mountain you can't climb, which talks about how much I talk. one word. I'm trying to sort it out all my words, but it's built this mountain I can't climb. And I know that you know that there's blood on my chest when I hold you close. That was the line that got me. And I just imagined Jesus going and just pulling me as close as he could, and it just piercing him to hold me, but he wasn't going to let me go.
Yeah.
And I was like, it wrecked me. So I think the reason why I love that song is I think it's a good song, but also it resonates so deeply with me about my story. And so, you know, I love singing at places like Celebrate Recovery and at places like rehab facilities and stuff and jails, because I'd say my songs make more sense to me in a jail than they do in a church building.
That makes sense.
Because people know they're prisoners there.
Yeah.
They know they got a problem.
Yeah. There's no fooling around.
No, it's also a captive audience too. I'm just going to turn the cool down a bit.
That's okay, man.
You missed my gag about being captive audience, but that's okay.
Hey, so talking about Cactus Heart, have you probably have, I'm just asking because you didn't say it, but have you ever heard of a Sabra?
Who?
A Sabra, S-A-B-R-A.
What's that?
A Sabra is a prickly pear.
Oh, I've heard of a prickly pear, but I didn't know it was called that. That's a fancy.
It's I'm not an expert in linguistics of any sort, but I was told that is a nickname for Israelis, her native Israelis. And I had a friend who's Jewish, and I went to Israel with him. A visit years ago, 11 years ago, something like that. I'd never been before. And he was explaining to me the concept of a Sabra, which is prickly on the outside. And when you open it up, it's very sweet and it's great to eat, right? And he was talking about like native Israelis, and sometimes, and all times, I'm not trying to put anybody in a box, are called Sabras because they're kind of sometimes hard to get to know. But once you get to know them, it's amazing, right? And so we're sitting on the airplane, and he was reiterating the story. And there was this very lovely flight attendant standing in front of me, yelling in Hebrew at this young man, at this older man sitting on the armrest of the airplane. And he was like, he kind of like, whatever, you know. Okay. So he got off because we were about to take off. And so he had to sit down and buckle up. That's what she's basically telling him. I guess in context is what I understood. And she goes, in Hebrew. And she turned to me and she's like, is there anything that we can help you with at all? If you get uncomfortable, there are pillows here, blah, 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 blah. And then he did something else. He goes, so if there's any problem, you just call me. I'd be glad to help you. And so she walks off. And she was like in her 50s and lovely lady, very nice to me. And, you know, most Israelis male and female, have been in the Israeli Defense Force of some sort. So can be pretty tough. And so she walks off, my friend Gene, he looks over and he goes, Sabra.
Right.
But whenever I would hear the song, Your Cactus Heart, that's what I always thought of the Sabra, is like, even though I'm prickly on the outside, he knows what's deeper inside. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm not trying to speak about your songs.
I just want to say something to you right now, because I understand this. But when you get to the end of something that you're saying, this voice comes to you and goes, shut up, EJ. I want you to know that it's not my voice.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's God's voice.
Yes.
But it's when you're somebody that talks a lot and you have linguistic intelligence, which means you're good at putting words together and you enjoy explaining it, because you enjoy it because you enjoy words and getting things across.
Yeah.
In the end of it, there's this sudden voice that goes, shut up. And,
yes.
and that's why you end up going, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm sorry. Whereas probably no one listening, including me, was doing anything other than, that was cool. So, you got to be careful of those voices, because
I got to figure out what accent that voice is in too. I think it's like, "Shut up, AJ." You know, what do you think you're doing?
Right now, it's probably Australian. Hey, mate.
Hey, mate.
Yeah.
Why don't you quiet down?
So I think that
Poppy.
We're having a conversation where we're both sharing things, and I prefer that anyway.
Yeah.
Because after 8 years of therapy and after telling my stories and singing in 60 countries, I cannot even tell you how over my own voice I am. I cannot begin to tell you how nice it is when you're talking. So
no, appreciate it.
Try not to do that again if you can help.
Okay, I'll try not to. I'll have your voice in my head going, no, keep talking. Keep going.
Well, no, I wouldn't have my voice in there. That's just replacing.
I'm replacing it.
That's we say in Australia, same shit, different smell. That's not what you want.
Yeah. So you spend a lot of time now touring and stuff. When we're not having a pandemic in the freaking world, you spend a lot of time in the Nordic countries.
I do.
And I find that fast because you come from the exact opposite end of the world.
When you're an independent musician who has no management, no agent, no record label, no distributor, no marketing team, no road manager, you just go where people ask you to come. And so back in about 14 years ago, they asked me to come to Norway, and I went there, and I just loved the people there.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe I'm very different to Scandinavian people. They're very reserved. They're very quiet. Yeah. So I go there a lot because they invite me to a lot.
Yeah.
And because of the nature of, like what I told you before, the positive about being very versatile, or as Americans would say, versatile, is that I can get put in a whole lot of different situations and still do well. So I don't do one type of venue. One night I'm in a bar. One night I'm in a prayer house.
Yeah.
Or as they call it, a bedehus, which is kind of like a community hall. Some nights I'm in a folk high school. Some nights I'm in a university.
Yeah.
Some nights I'm at a house concert. And because the positive of being thrown into massively different situations, I'm fairly flexible. And so I think maybe that, and I don't know why else, but I had to start performing a lot in Europe about 10 years ago because I'm not really American Christian music material.
Right.
I don't really write the kind of songs that audience really laps up. They want the lyricist to land the plane.
Yeah.
And I don't like doing that. That's not my joy in life.
Yeah.
I made a big mistake actually, EJ, that probably I should share with you. I made a big mistake of basing my songs on the parables of Jesus as opposed to the sermons of Billy Graham. I just made a massive mistake. I should have thought it through better, because instead of writing stories with heavenly meanings that you really had to know God to figure out, I should have really just had 3 points with a very clear invitation.
Yeah.
And then I would have done a lot better. So I made that big mistake. But as a result of that chronic misjudgment, I've had to find countries in the world that subtlety is appreciated.
Yeah.
Turns out to be everywhere but America. Turns out Canada's fine with it. Actually, everyone else is. The evangelical crowd in America, that what they want in their music is they want to get it in 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I don't do well with that.
Yeah.
And it's not because I hate those people. They're awesome people. I've sung to them in 50 states.
Yeah.
They're great. They're awesome. It's just that I can't write to that. So part of the reason why when I got an interest in Norway, I got an interest in Germany or in Austria or in Czech Republic or in Denmark or Finland or Sweden or Switzerland or whatever, part of the reason I probably really focused on it is because I thought, wait, what? I can drink what when I sing? I can say what when I tell my stories? I can play where and it's okay? So it was more like where I grew up.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest reason why I've done like 80 to 100 shows in Europe every year for about the last 15 years.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I really have it when you started when I noticed you started doing it, because I'm sure you started way before I noticed. But when I noticed you started doing it, I just I would check in all the time, like you and Klaus Jambor touring together, and go to that in a second. But that has been fun. You look like you're having fun. I'm going to go back 1 minute. Well, about 30 minutes ago, when we were talking about you won an award, you won a Dove Award, right? You and Paul Colman trio, and then you got nominated for a Grammy, right? I saw your performance. I don't think I'd ever seen it before. I saw your performance at the Dove Awards.
Oh yeah.
That was the most uncomfortable I've ever seen you in my life.
Really?
Yep. You might not have been uncomfortable, but I'm talking about the Paul Colman that I see in everything else. You were more like straight man, you know. The music was still there.
You also had to play a 48-second version of the song.
Exactly. That's what I knew it had to be something, but it wasn't a typical PC3 or Paul Colman performance at all.
When people, the funny thing is like, oh, here's another one.
That's my youngest daughter.
Yeah.
No, it's just an observation, because any other time it's like this. The words may be different, the context may be different, but it's always this person that I see. Even though you might not have seen that person, you were thinking it was a different person. It still came across same, because it's a very open and friendly person, and you were just like playing like you were standing behind the microphone so much more than you usually do, and so that's just fun. And then so fast forward. When I see like even just pictures or videos of you and Klaus Jambor together, it's like you're having fun. Yeah. You're having a blast.
For whatever reason, he puts a P in the middle of his name, so it's Klaus P. Jambor. Klaus is, he's as well as one of my best mates. Mm-hmm. I met Klaus. Our meeting story is pretty awesome. This was in the south of Germany, probably maybe 2004.
Uh-huh.
He was, I was the headliner at this small festival that was held in this old wheat silo. There was about 300 kids there. Yeah, it was like this building, and there was 3 artists. There was this guy that went on first called Yacht, and he was in a famous boy band, and he played. Mm-hmm. And then there was Klaus, and then me. But before the show, I guess they had a poster of Paul Colman, Nashville, Tennessee. They said that because they thought they would get people more there than Australia, I guess. Unbeknownst to me, Klaus, who very much like me, kind of struggles with the predominant voice that sort of says, if you're a follower of Jesus, this is how you need to write, or this is how you need to talk, knowing that it only represents one culture. It's like Jesus probably wouldn't have even, yeah. So it's kind of like we haven't, but then again, because we're trying to be well known, you have to come to that culture.
I guess.
So he'd been rubbed the wrong way, unbeknownst to me, just weeks before, and had finally gone back to Germany going, screw you guys, I don't want to be in the world. So when he sees Paul Colman, Nashville, Tennessee, has no idea I'm Australian, no idea I feel exactly the same way he does. So he walks up to me backstage, and he says, "Are you Paul Colman?" I go, "Yeah." And he makes as close to the worst insult that you could ever make to someone, like something about my mother.
Nice.
And I just looked at him, and I fired a worse one back. And I've never done that before or since, but I'm like, I tend to play to my audience. I'm like, well, that's what you're going to get. Like, I grew up in pubs, and I taught high school in Australia, and I've sung in Australian jails, and I'm not afraid of you, you little German punk. So I just fired one back at him, and he just got the massivest fight. And he was like, okay, this is going to be good. Well, then to the gig. So this first guy plays for an hour and a half, Yacht. opening act.
Oh.
Hour and a half. Now, I know this is a culture that grew up on Wagner that went for 5 hours, but that was a long time.
They were forced to listen to it, though.
So I keep going out to the promoter. I mean, is he going to finish? He is good. That's as good. That's as good. And I'm like, no, this has been quite a while. Like, if you want me to sing to people, this other guy hasn't even sung it. That's as good. People loves as long shows. They will listen. It's okay. We have a little smoke break. They have a blackwurst. It's great. So that was pretty terrible.
I enjoyed it.
He finishes. There's a little break, and then class goes on. Class sings for just under 2 hours. I haven't even sung yet, and it's been over 3.5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sitting there with the image of trying to give someone a steak who has just eaten everything at Golden Corral, and they look at my steak and go, "Whoa!"
Just a bit of mint. It's just a mint. No, don't worry.
So I go on stage, surely, sure enough, I'm pretty entertaining. After 3 songs, I'm like, this is not working. They're done.
Yeah.
So I did what any smart, wily old man does. I said, where's class? Because they loved him. So I brought him on stage, and we played together for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And we never even played a single song together.
Wow.
And we just listened to each other's music and played it and cut up. And from that day on, we've been the best friends. And so I love touring with class with very, very different artists. Like,
yeah, totally different vibe and everything. Yeah.
When we're doing our tours, we take it in turns to start the show.
Mm-hmm.
And Glass is such an artist. Like he'll say things like, okay, I'm starting the show tonight. Normally me, it's like, hey everybody, here we go. Boom, gaka, boom, gaka. Hey, I love that. All right, brother, what you say? Yeah, come on, dude. And he's like, I said, you're starting tonight. He goes, yeah. And so I just learned I have to do whatever he says. And I go, what are we doing? He goes, we're going to walk down the middle of the church building with a cup of coffee in our hands. And then we're going to sit on the chairs and just look at people while they get uncomfortable. I'm like, then you know what happens is that he has this way, and it works, but it's completely different. So we have this wonderful combination, and touring together really is fun. But in Europe, you can be way more loose and still be considered a follower of Jesus. But what's interesting is when you travel around the world, what the order of things that people have, like in Norway, for example, you say hell at closest to the bad thing. You say shit, they don't even care. Yeah. They don't smoke or drink, but they'll chew. And they'll move in with each other before they get married. Totally fine. Christians, yeah. And then you go to California, if you even start with shh, the crook comes and you're off the stage, or if you even mention the word alcohol. Yeah. But then again, you go to the pastor's house and he's got like a desk that's worth $800,000 and a collection of 19 Martin guitars and 4 Harleys. And that's fine. And when you mention anything about having a beer, and he'll say, look, you can have that, but I'm going to have to sit on the other side of the restaurant. And then you go to Germany and the pastor takes you out for shooters after the thing. So the great thing about traveling is you sort of get to know what are the essentials, what are the inessentials. Let's agree on the essentials, and let's have grace about the inessentials. Yeah. But it just happens to be that the largest market in the world for what we call Christian music, which is really a travesty, because if you tell someone what something is, like, you've already ruined it. Yeah. If I say that's my rich friend, just say that's my friend. Like, that's my guy. Not just that's my friend. That's my wife. No, that's just what this is. Not just say that's my friend. If I want to figure out what kind of person they are, let me do it free of you setting it up. Mm-hmm. So when you say Christian music, you're telling people what they are about to experience. Yeah. So there's no mystery. There's no, it's like, and I'm probably going to get criticized for this, but I have a feeling that one of the things God's loving about this virus is just not having millions of people tell him everything about himself that he already knows all the time. I'm going, oh my gosh, this is so enjoyable, because if I have to hear Grace and Face rhyme one more time, I'm probably going to send a plague. Like I am, and you know, because we've been told how important that is.
Yes.
And yet relationships are way more important.
Yep.
And yet if you look at the whack job Christians on Facebook, it's like, dude, you need to leave your gift at the altar and go get therapy, because you, my friend, are a moron. That's not persecution. That's justice.
You know, when justice happens to us, we get all upset about it.
Well, no, I want mercy for me and justice for everyone else. I mean,
yeah, me too. Rich Mullins maybe had one thing he said one time years ago was that you can't really baptize a music. You can't baptize a type of music. And the other thing I remember him saying, you were talking a while ago about you know when people come and they hear your music, it's almost like they expect to hear the greatest hits. You know, before you even release that album, the most requested. I was at but 3 months before Rich Mullins died, I was at someone called me and said, hey, Rich Mullins is going to be at 16th Street Baptist Church. Do you know where that is in Birmingham, Alabama?
I sure don't.
That is the church that was blown up in the during the civil rights movement, and there were 3 little girls. No. That you didn't know. The 3 little girls were murdered there by racists, right?
Black girls.
Yep. As an African American church in downtown Birmingham, next to the Civil Rights Institute, and he had something canceled. You know, some kind of other concert venue canceled. And so they said, hey, it's a surprise concert. And it was him and Mitch McVicker and like all those, the Kid Brothers of St. Frank or whatever. Yeah, that was the name of the group. And the Ragamuffin Band group. And there was this is just the context. So, you know, a bunch of people show up, about 300 people show up to that church because it was a surprise concert. And there was a guy sitting on the very front row. This is the whole reason I'm telling you this story. Long hair, had a notebook about that thick. And it was all of Rich Mullins' songs that he'd probably ever written, you know, period. And he was sitting on the very front row and he had it open like a hymnal. And he was just singing along, you know. Well, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? That's cool. Maybe he just didn't remember the lyrics. It's okay. Maybe it's short-term memory. And then he started making requests. Like he was sitting on the front row and he started going, how about this? How about this song? How about this song? And Rich stopped the concert in the middle and very gently, I totally could see you doing this, very gently going, look, dude, I'm not worth it. This is not about me, really. I'm glad you like my music and everything, but we can't do it like that because I'm not worth that kind of worship. Right. And I was just like, those two things. When seeing him do that really blew my mind. You know,
you can be an evangelical in America and like Rich Mullins now because he's dead.
Yeah, but it was controversial when he was alive.
Well, he's a chain smoker too.
Yeah, that was the thing that was always complaint. Oh yeah, I saw him outside smoking. I'm like, he saved my life.
Hang on, what was that gossip? Because
exactly, it's like I think that's called gossip.
I just want to be sure we're talking about, because like smoking, yeah, it's bad for you, but that kills people.
Yeah. Did you see this or did you hear it from someone else? Oh, I heard it from 2 or 3 other people.
I'm just sharing it with you as a prayer concern.
Yeah. Prayer request, good gossip. Yeah. So, I could do church stuff all day. Anyways, because you're a PK, I'm a PK. If that doesn't set you on a path of life, good Lord.
I will say this on a serious note about like, I honestly thought for quite a period of time that I was getting brownie points with God by pointing out the hypocrisy of Christians. I just thought he enjoyed it as much as I did. And I feel like at some point, and I'm paraphrasing, I heard God's voice speak to me and say, just for the record, I think you're right about this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, but just also for the record, I love these people, and this really hurts me. So,
I understand.
If you can find a way to do that with honey rather than vinegar. Now, having said that, one of the hardest things is that when you have a prophetic gift, which is very close to the word pathetic as well, but when you have a prophetic gift, like you look at a guy like Jeremiah, and you can imagine people saying, "Can you just say that a bit nicer?" Or like, Amos or any of the prophets, like even John the Baptist, like he was rough, big time rough around the edges and very scornful. And same, Jesus of Nazareth was very scornful too towards certain people.
Yeah.
Now people say, "Oh, that was the Bible character, that was Jesus." But the point is, there is a spot for that. I guess the difference between maybe them and me is that where it's coming from. Yeah. And I think what I've been trying to learn to do is to say what I want to say, but maybe lead with questions. Like Jesus asked so many questions. And to make sure if I get a bad reaction, it's because they're reacting to the Spirit of God as opposed to the Spirit of Paul. And I don't mean the apostle, I mean the actual chief of sinners. So yeah, it's I think it's good to have the kind of questioning, like the little kid in The Emperor's New Clothes, like, hang on a minute.
That guy's naked.
This time out. Like that, I think we need that. But I think in the end that kindness, when it's expressed, and I've done a lot of the other. I've done a lot of the thinking that I was winning points, but even the scripture says that you can have all the mysteries, and if you don't have love, you're just a gong. And I've been a gong. So that's why what I've learned to do is I've learned to, or at least tried to, even though in this talk I've called a few things out. I've tried to learn to point it at myself.
Yeah.
And I think that when you share your story and you're able to say to people, the truth is, guys, I really struggle with not judging. I struggle when I see people criticize me for having a beer, and yet I see them and they're like 150 pounds overweight. And I think, so I have self-control. I'm not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I'm drinking this substance, and I'm 52 and I've never been an alcoholic, and I've never had an addiction to alcohol. But you look like a troll. Like that's where it gets over the line. My point is,
I understand.
I'm not exactly sure what to do in that. Like, what would you suggest that I do in that moment? Because obviously I'm battling with that. And I don't want to criticize them. And then all of a sudden they're helping me with my problem, but maybe there's a learning in that for them. Whereas I've been too quick to teach, and it never works. That's where you're that's a hill you don't want to die on.
Yeah.
That's a battle that you might get some good hits, but you will not win that war. And I have burnt a lot of bridges with people from a lack of kindness.
Yeah.
So I think that in the context of all of that stuff, I will say, I'll tell you a great story actually, because I saw you on Winter Jam a year ago, and was it in Birmingham? It was in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but there was this guy called Pastor Bobby, and he was the guy that got up at the start and the end of the evening, and he was the tour pastor.
Yeah.
Pastor Bobby, I think, is from Georgia. And he's got that old school, Martha. Oh, Martha. Jesus said to her, Martha. Like he's got that old school thing.
Yeah. Annabella accent. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Just awesome. Anyway, I'd say probably theologically, Pastor Bobby and I are about as different as any two people can be.
Yeah.
But as soon as I saw him on that tour, I felt like God used him to teach me something, because Bobby loves people.
Mm-hmm.
He just grins from ear to ear and is a constant encouragement to people every day.
Yeah.
And he would open up the night with a prayer, and there was something he said in a prayer that really bothered me. And so about 3 weeks in, I said, Pastor Bobby, I want to talk to you about something. Well, of course, Paul, come over here. Come on. Bring your food over. You're a brother in Christ. Come on.
Yeah.
You know, so I sit down and he goes, why is it, brother? Just tell me. And I said, well, Pastor Bobby, I got to confess that most of my life I've been a real critical, self-righteous bastard. He goes, all right, okay.
Threw him off a little bit.
I said, yeah. I said, so I would like to challenge you on something, but I would like to be completely different to what I've been, and I also like to honor you as the pastor of the tour and as an older man. But I also want to challenge something you said. And he goes, I can appreciate that. Come on now. And I said, every night when you pray, you thank God that we live in the greatest country in the world. Why do you say that? He goes, what do you mean? I said, why do you say it's the greatest? Well, it is. And I said, well, there's 243 countries. And do you mean in healthcare? Do you mean in education? Do you mean in what's the criteria for greatest? He said, oh, you're taking it too literally. I just mean like I want people to be thankful for where they live. And I said, why don't you say that? Why do you make it a competition? Because there's people on stage from Australia and Ireland and everything, and it's like, why do we have to? What's the insecurity that we have to be the greatest? Like, how many have you been to, for example? Like, what's the? And I said, if you want people to be thankful, why don't you just say, I'm thankful that we live in a country where we can do this, or I'm thankful we live in a great country, or I'm thankful, you know what he did? He changed it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, what I learned from it wasn't that. It was more just that I realized, that a lot of times I had approached people without love and respect.
Yeah.
And then been trying to correct them.
Yeah.
And it's like, uh-oh.
I do the same thing.
Hashtag hypocrisy alert.
My sin is not as bad as your sin.
Right. And let me self-righteously point out to you your self-righteous. Wait, what?
How dare you?
How dare you be self-righteous? Because I'm self-righteous.
I've got a corner market on that.
Yeah, so I think it's within the context of things I've said about whatever I also want to say. If the most conservative, Calvinist, Southern Baptist,
mm-hmm.
fire and brimstone preacher, and a Jesuit, justice-seeking, gay-friendly, United Methodist pastor were in a jail cell and they were going to be beheaded the next day, none of that would matter, would it?
Mm.
No. Eventually, hopefully they'd get down to just, hey, we both love God. We've got our differences. Let's pray. Let's sing. Let's encourage each other. And so I'm trying to see people that way, but also still be open to, the leading of the Holy Spirit. And, Jesus said to Nicodemus, if you're led by the Spirit, you're like the wind. In other words, you're unpredictable and people don't know where you're coming and going from. And I can tell you right now, in my experience, I have never met anyone more predictable than an evangelical American Christian. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm trying to have that thought of being led by the Spirit at the same sense as not being led by criticism.
Yeah.
But it must be very difficult in a country where you're brought up with the American flag wraps the Bible, and we weren't brought up like that.
Yeah.
So it must be very difficult. Having said that, I love the people here, and I want to serve them as opposed to criticize them. But having said that, I'm constantly thinking, God, why did you give me these thoughts? Like why did you put these thoughts on my heart if you know they're so diametrically opposed to most of the people I interact with and live with? Like, why would you do that? Am I being critical? Am I just being a jerk? Or is this something you've given me to express? And if you have, can you help me with as much honey and as little as vinegar as possible?
Yeah.
And that's what I've always kind of tried to do in my song, as best as possible, is do that. But it is difficult when you've, you know, like I see that thing, you know, on Facebook on New Year's Eve, you know, 65,000 kids in Passion Conference or whatever bring in the new year by singing praises to God. And my first thought is, would have been better if they'd been out serving the poor. Like it would have been a greater impact. Because I've sung like a saint and driven home like an asshole many times.
Yeah, me too.
And so the thing about it is that yes, praises are good, but it's also pretty easy.
Yeah.
Like going down and if 65,000 kids within a 10-mile radius of that center had been given a leader and 3 of them split up into people with different skills and then just gone out and served, it probably would have had a great impact on the community. And I don't think God would have gone, wait, sing about me. He would have gone, you know, that what I mean is every time I'm somewhere, I feel like I write songs for people that aren't in the church, and yet I've been invited to church to sing. Yeah. And so I'm like, I feel like an alien a lot of the times, and yet that's also my team. And so then it's a matter of like, okay, well, why have I been given these thoughts? God, I'm going to give them back to you, and then can you give them back to me, but with a much better flavor?
Yeah.
Because I've mixed myself with this, and it's not pretty.
Yeah. In the tradition that we worship in now, I enjoy this bit. It always, there's 2 things in the service, the liturgical service that we do that amazes me. One is when we do the communion, we join with angels and archangels as we sing this hymn. And it's like, wait a minute, we're with angels? And we're also doing it with the world. We're not doing it with just us. We're part of a bigger thing. And the other one is during the confession, the general confession, which is, we have not loved you with our whole hearts. And there's no dancing around. We have not done it, and we have not loved our neighbor as we love ourselves. And help us to change that forward. Yeah, I didn't have that growing up. And there were some really good people. Like if it hadn't been for my father and mother, I wouldn't be there would be very little about me redeemable, I think. However, as far as people goes, right? But I'm very thankful that we're humans and we can change. Like you're talking about, like you're asking to change. And it's a process all the time. It doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you're alive, you still can change, you know?
Right.
So that's encouraging.
Let me, I'll read you something. I got to go in a second. My kids are about to turn up.
No worries, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. And when you get done, I want you to, at the end, I wanted you to give us, I'll post your website and stuff on the end of this.
I don't care about that.
Oh, I know that, but
people can Google my name if they want to find it. Don't worry about that stuff.
But they'll put the E in and they won't know.
Then
it's no E. No E.
I want to read you something that I wrote. It is a song, but it hasn't been finished yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called "I Don't Get It."
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually just an honest statement to God about most of the time that I'm in what we refer to as a worship setting. Sadly, we use that word in a way that really just limits it to singing, but
it's usually just a sing-along with the greatest hits.
Well, it's we just refer it to singing. It's not. I worship with the way I resolve conflict. I've never heard people say that.
Exactly.
So this is me at the back of a big church building where people are going off, and I'm just not feeling it, and yet wanting to engage with that idea rather than just go, oh, bunch of BS, or I'll wait till the concert's over or whatever. It's actually wanting to engage with God about the fact that I don't get it, as opposed to be cynical and just go, well, a bunch of idiots anyway. They don't think like me, so they must be wrong. Like it's actually not that. Right? So it goes, I don't get it. Why don't I feel a thing? I feel like I don't belong when the people start to sing. I don't get it, because I know I love you too. Is there something that I'm missing, a special part of you? I don't get it when they say, let your presence come, because weren't you here already before anyone? But when I walk out on the street and I greet the people that I meet, I feel like my heart is just exploding with the love that you're downloading. People swaying, it looks like pain upon their face. What are the things you're saying in that higher place? Am I resisting? Am I holding out on you? Will my pride not let me enter into what you want to do? What they're feeling just seems to leave me cold, like I'm watching lovers kissing with a love I've never known. But when I walk out into the street and I greet the people that I meet, it feels like my heart is just exploding with the love that you're downloading. And when I walk outside the door, I feel like I can breathe again. I think of all the words you've spoken about living for the poorest and the broken. And the saints, they gather and groove. They chant for revival and they beg you to move. And outside the streets are on fire. But safe in your house, they're on fire for you. And they tell you who you are. And it sounds like the guy from U2's on guitar. The people are swaying and swinging. We're not great at love, but we're good at the singing. And the leaders are rock stars with big homes and fast cars. I don't get it. I won't pay it. $100 to see a band up on stage and singing, lead me to the promised land. I don't buy it that the bang is worth the buck. If I pay a little extra, I can meet these little punks. But when I walk out in the street and greet the people that I meet, feels like my heart is just exploding. The love that you're downloading. And when I walk outside the door, I feel like I can breathe again. I think of all the words you've spoken about living for the poorest of the broken. Is it holy fire I'm breathing? Am I a prophet that you've called? Are you saying what I'm saying? Or am I wrong and deeply flawed? If I'm mistaken, please forgive me. If I'm misguided, show me how. I'm just saying I don't get it, if that's allowed.
I wish I had a microphone to like drop.
Well, it's me being honest. It's once again, I could create this big diatribe pointing it out, but in the end, I'm saying, I don't get it. Like when we play bowling, why don't we say, God, let your presence? I mean, why is it any different? Like, well, what's the difference between having a joke in the parking lot and doing that? If you're still with your father, it's all with your father. But we elevate this as like if I look like I'm trying to pass a ball, that's what's really gonna, and I think God really showed up. I'm like, oh my gosh, the next idiot that says that, I'm literally gonna walk up and snot them and say, no, you muppet, you turned up. God was here before your late. Oh my gosh. Like, so anyway, that's just kind of like an honest.
Yeah, no, I understand. And I think but a lot of people, they feel that way and they don't know what to do with it because they feel guilty because they feel that way. They're like, oh, I must be mean or something. I think the approach is to be honest and at the same time go, look, if I'm wrong, tell me. I'm glad. I mean, I'm okay for when being wrong. I've been wrong before, and this whole life is about learning, and I feel like we're in some kind of a counseling session for me.
Like that.
No, I'm just joking because I'm sitting there going, I got to apply this better. So,
well, the whole thing is that applying something better is kind of religious. In the end,
exactly.
Whenever we don't love, it's because we haven't received enough love for ourselves yet.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm saying is where this whole conversation started is that you reminded me of a time in my life where I look back and it's easy for me to write off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And yet it reminded me of the fact that God was going, yeah, you don't know that. That's okay.
Yeah.
So, we can't have that attitude of like, oh, I've got to put it in prayer. It's more like, no, if you have more of God, then you'll have more of his love.
Mm-hmm.
Can't. That's why being Christ-like, trying to be Christ-like is religion.
Yeah.
Got nothing to do with it. You can't be Christ-like. You can have the Holy Spirit living in you that manifests the fruits of the Spirit,
mm-hmm.
and be led by that.
Yeah.
But if someone then says you're Christ-like, quickly forget it. What would Jesus do? It's just the worst question. It sounds like he's dead. Like,
mm-hmm.
what Jesus, what are you doing now? That's a great question.
That's a good question.
But the other ones are all designed to keep people moral and keep people in place. And it's religion, my friend. It's like that prayer. God listens to those that seek after him. And I'm like, really? Like, God spoke to Balaam through his donkey.
That was the very first, when you said that, that was the first thing I thought of. He had to,
didn't you? Yeah.
I know, Balaam's ass. There's a song by Bill Maloney and the Vigilantes of Love called Balaam's Ass. And I used to request it every time I'd go to the concert. I yelled it out just because I could yell it out in public.
Yes.
And at a Baptist school. And he kind of looked and go, huh. So no, when I think of that, when I think of those kind of prayers, I always think of the publican and the Pharisee when they're in the same area, and the publican's like, the Pharisee's like, I'm so glad I'm not like that, because that's how I am. I'm so glad I'm not like these people over here. And I'm pointing at the religious people, most of the time. I'm like, I'm glad I'm not like that. And I need to be more like the publican's like, man, I suck. And he's like, I can't even look up, So.
Well, yeah. And there's a fine line between that and beating yourself up. Like, my kids are about to turn up, right?
Okay.
Literally in 15 seconds, they're going to walk through this door, and you're going to see what the vibe's like.
Okay.
Like, real time, bro. This is real time. This is like. Here they go. Hello.
Hello.
That's EJ.
Hey.
That's Ellie and Katie. You want to say hello to him? He's just doing an interview. He lives in Birmingham.
How are you? You're gorgeous ladies.
He may have met with you before, but did you meet them before? Like, they were really young?
They were little. They were so little.
Yeah.
So little. It's very nice to meet you again.
Kids you got, EJ?
Huh?
How many kids you got?
I have 4, 14, 11, 8, and 5. Girl, boy.
Look, you can see my face a tiny bit sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah, I've worked out something though. Watch this. And clear.
We've learned Zoom magic tricks.
I don't know.
I was excited and it just went away.
Let's do one more. Any thought you have that you want to express or any question you want to ask, let's just do one more little. We've covered a lot. I mean, but it's been like when you eat at some place where you have all these things on the plate that don't put together, but they're really great.
Yeah. Well,
anything you were researching or anything that you were thinking about, I really wanted to say this or I really wanted to talk about that.
I wanted to have a conversation with you. That was it. I'd researched it because there were some things that I was fuzzy about that I wanted, like dates and stuff, like, you guys started in like 98 and those kind of things. Just because I'd known you so long, I never Googled you much because I would follow you on Facebook and talk to you.
I wish I'd known that earlier.
Say what? You in a different relationship.
I mean, I feel like that's,
Well, I just got it straight from the horse's mouth. I never. Why Google it when I live it? Right. There's not much that we haven't covered, but I do. One thing I did want to say. How about that? I wanted to say something.
Go ahead, say it.
Is I appreciate very much how you don't think, maybe you don't think you have always been that way, but at least in my view, you've always been very honest in person. And I always felt like you were the same up on stage. You know, you were going through stuff, and who isn't? But not to belittle that, but you always came across as trying to be honest and trying to learn and trying to
I think so.
speak truth to people.
I definitely was. I might have fallen short, but I was wanting to.
Yeah, you were skeptical, but you were seeking truth. And so I've always really appreciated that. I love your music. And I didn't, before I met you, before I met you, I'd only heard about your music for like a week. Because at the time, I didn't listen to much Christian music at all, or even in CCM or anything like that. I didn't follow all that stuff. So when they told me, hey, you're going to meet Paul Colman, I was like, sweet, who's that?
Yeah.
And, but it's been a pleasant surprise. It's been very joyful for me over the years. We don't get to hang out very much. But you're one of those friends that for at least me, it always feels like I saw you last week.
No, I love hanging out with you. I'm very fortunate in that I have people all over the world that I have that kind of relationship with. So let me leave you with a thought about you.
You're gonna make me very uncomfortable. That's okay. It's okay.
It's just a little encouragement. I mean, it's a lot easier to say things to others than it is to say. And so I received what you said, and you know my story. It's hard for me to receive that too, but I think everything I need to know about you is that, you know, when I'm on Winter Jam, you find out I'm coming to Birmingham and I'm working for Child Fund and I'm a rep and I'm training volunteers and I'm handing out pamphlets and I'm picking up packets and I'm signing them and I'm doing lots of stuff.
Yeah.
EJ goes, let's hang out. So we hang out, and I can't think of anyone that I know that did what you did. And that is, you just came in and I said, do you want to help me? Yes. Okay, yes. And then you just did it with such love and enthusiasm that it was like that was your heart and who you are. So I know that you might have developed some cynicism, and I know you might have developed some whatever it is. But I think I'm looking at the couch that you sat on and sang on that track. I'm looking at the couch right here. One day I'm going to show the world that video.
That's fine.
Like what I'm saying is, so the last 2 times we hung out, number one, you come to my house and I got this track called, I don't even know what it was called.
You were singing in a pub.
Don't fall far from the tree. And I just set you up a mic and said, react to this like you're in a pub. And you were just so funny and so full of joy. And so I think that, you know, it's hard to see yourself that way when you're self-critical, when you feel like you've always stood out, when you feel like, you know, and I know that we share some of those similarities. But imagine what it could be. Imagine what it would be like if we could see ourselves the way God sees us. And that instead of amplifying our faults, and instead of getting to the end of a really beautiful thing and going, oh crap, I shouldn't have talked, and then apologizing, instead be able to just experience how we experience one another. Yeah. So I'm going to challenge myself to believe that I am who you see. And I'm going to challenge you to do the same, because I think that's who I know you as. Yeah. You're all heart, and yes, you see things from another way, and yes, you've always gone on, hang on a minute, that's not right, which labeled as cynicism was really, it's just a questioning mind. Yeah. But in the end, when you turn up as a heart guy, and it's so soft that you probably had to protect it with your mind. But I know that's who your wife and kids see you as. That's who I see you as. So, I'm not going to sit there and chat for 2.25 hours with anybody else about it.
Well, I'll tell you, this part I'll edit. Go ahead.
You're not going to edit what I just said about
No. I was going to tell you what I was going to say. If you want me to edit this out, I will. I don't know if you remember this. I had just lost my job years ago.
Okay.
And Paul Colman, he was coming to Birmingham. I'm trying to make the context a little vague to protect the innocent. You were coming down to Birmingham to visit some people. And I had a rough week. And it's easy for me to respond to you that way because of how you've treated me as well.
Right.
You invited me along. You were playing golf that day. And we went to eat. And these people seemed very uncomfortable with me being there.
They did?
Yes. And you were the most encouraging. This is my friend. And hey, man, hey, we're going to do this, and bought me dinner, and we drank a beer together and talked, and it was in the middle of other things going on, and I just walked away. I was like, and that's when you gave me one of your albums that I listened to all the way home, and the track "The Best Is Yet to Come" was on there, and so there's a lot of those moments I've had with you as well, and it's appreciated. It's very appreciated.
Thank you, buddy.
Very cool.
There's a lot of love on this Zoom call.
There's a lot of love.
And being real men, we have to somehow try to sabotage that.
Nah, I'm not gonna shout out. I'd hug it out with you right now, baby.
How about Jets and them Jets?
I gotta hit something now. I gotta go build something.
I gotta hit something right now. I think you might want to edit that out.
Yeah. But anyways, Paul, thank you for your time. And go enjoy your time with your kids. And thank you for sharing your stories with us.